Before we open the file, I need you to look at something. Not a creature this time, not a desert, a jar. A small glass jar with a smiling baby on the label. Maybe the word organic printed on the front. Maybe a color that suggested safety. Green, yellow, soft white. You've seen it before. You may have bought it. You may have fed it to your child. You trusted it because someone was supposed to check. Someone with a title, a laboratory, a federal mandate. They checked. That is what makes this file so different from the others. They found what was in the jar. They documented it. They shared it with the manufacturers, and the jars stayed on the shelves. In February 2021, the United States House of Representatives published a report. It was not a theory. It was not an investigation in progress. It was a conclusion. The report examined 7 of the largest baby food manufacturers in the country. What they found inside those products was not a trace amount, not an acceptable margin. The FDA sets its maximum safe level for lead in bottled water at 5 parts per billion. Beech-Nut used ingredients testing as high as 886 parts per billion for lead. Nurture, the maker of Happy Baby, tested finished products at 641 parts per billion. Gerber, Parents' Choice, Plum Organics, all tested above the safe limit. Some 5 times higher, some 10 times higher. The word organic on the label did not mean what you thought it meant. But here is what moved this from a discovery to a decision. The congressional investigation did not just test the products. It reviewed the internal documents. The companies had already tested their own products. They knew what was in the jar before you bought it, before you opened it, before you fed it to your child. They knew. And when the congressional investigation requested their internal documents, Walmart, Campbell, Sprout Organic Foods refused to cooperate. That is not an accident of oversight. That is a choice. His name is Jaden. His mother did everything right. She read labels. She chose organic. She warmed the jar in her hands before she fed him. I know that kind of love. Most of us were fed that same way. She didn't know. No one told her that organic doesn't mean clean soil. They didn't tell her lead travels through the ground before it ever reaches a vegetable. They didn't tell her a congressional report had already named the jar she was holding and no one thought to call her. Jaden was diagnosed at 2. His mother sat in a doctor's office and was handed a pamphlet. Nobody mentioned the jar. Research has consistently linked early childhood exposure to lead, arsenic, cadmium, and mercury to elevated risk of neurodevelopmental disorders. The American Academy of Pediatrics has stated there is no safe level of lead for children. As of 2026, one law firm alone represents more than 8,000 families in litigation, alleging that heavy metals in baby food contributed to their children's diagnoses. More than 400 cases are pending in federal court. Jaden is not broken. He's a child whose body was introduced to documented neurotoxins in the first year of his life, and he deserved better. The FDA's answer was a program called Closer to Zero. It sounds like a commitment. It functions as a timeline. Voluntary guidance, phased rollouts, action levels, not limits, that by design allow a percentage of products to exceed the safety threshold and remain in compliance. The congressional report was published in 2021. As of 2026, mandatory heavy metals testing for baby food exists in California, Maryland, and Virginia. 3 states. The rest of the country is still waiting. This file is not here to frighten you. It is here to give you what they chose not to. As of 2025, California law requires manufacturers to make heavy metals testing results available via QR code on packaging. If your state does not require disclosure, you can request testing data directly from the manufacturer. Rice-based baby foods, fruit juices, and sweet potato products have consistently tested highest for arsenic and lead. Introducing a variety of whole foods as early as developmentally appropriate reduces cumulative heavy metal exposure. This is not about perfection. It's about information. Information they had and chose not to give you. Jaden's file doesn't close here. What was in the jar is one entry point into a system that found him from multiple directions. The next case file follows Jaden further back, before the jar was opened, before he was born, into the soil his food came from, into the air his father breathed, into something that was being rewritten before Jaden took his first breath. Case file 003. The file continues. The jar is still on the shelves. Different labels, softer regulations. The same question unanswered. Who decided that the acceptable margin of lead in a child's food was anything other than 0? And why did it take a congressional report for the rest of us to see what their own laboratories already knew? If you fed your child from one of those jars, you were not negligent. You were trusting a system that wasn't trustworthy. That is not your failure. That is the file. The file is yours now.